The journey to peace in Mindanao. Now at an important stretch. President Duterte has signed the Bangsamoro Organic Law that would create the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao and grant wider self-rule to the Muslim minority in the southern Philippines. The Bangsamoro Organic Law is one of the requirements under a peace agreement signed between the government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF, the country's largest Muslim rebel group. The law is an important milestone, embodying the aspirations for self-determination and meant to correct historical injustices and grievances of the Moros. When the Philippines came under Spanish and American rule, Islam in the country was sent to the fringes. Bloody pacification campaigns launched against its believers. In the 1930s, American authorities encouraged Christians to migrate to Mindanao. Muslims became a minority, victims of land grabbing. Mindanao's people and resources exploited. This left many Mindanaoans poor, feeling neglected, and resenting Imperial Manila. The Jabida massacre led to the formation in the 70s of the Moro National Liberation Front, which called for separation and independence. The armed conflict made the region poorer, its residents yearning and needing basic services. A recent survey showed many provinces in the ARMM are among the poorest in the country. The peace process was meant to correct all of this, but it has had a lot of stops and starts. The MNLF and the Marcos government signed the 1976 Tripoli Agreement in a bid to end the fighting in exchange for the government working to grant greater autonomy in Muslim-populated areas. When the Marcos government was toppled, Corazon Aquino held peace talks with the MNLF. In 1989, the Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao was created, with its first elections held the next year. In 1996, the Ramos government and the MNLF signed a final peace agreement. The next year, the government held talks with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, a breakaway faction of the MNLF. But during the Estrada administration, the government launched an all-out war against the MILF. Under the Arroyo administration, the Supreme Court struck down in 2008 the MOA-AD, a peace deal that would have given MILF control over a wide area in the south. This triggers more fighting. In 2011, President Benigno Aquino III met with leaders of the MILF in Japan, a meeting that would jumpstart the peace talks. The next year, the two sides signed a broad roadmap to peace. This included details on power sharing, wealth divisions, and disarmament. In 2014, the two sides signed a comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro that served as a basis for the draft Bangsamoro Basic Law. Later that year, two drafts were submitted to Aquino. The final draft of the BBL is given to Congress, but lawmakers failed to pass the law until the end of Aquino's term. Finally, in July 2018, President Duterte signed the Bangsamoro Organic Law. With a stroke of a pen, the document became a bearer of the hope and dreams of the region and its people.
Centuries of injustices and grievances, decades of bloody conflict, and now a new day could be dawning for Mindanao. Hello, I'm Karen Davila and welcome to Bangsamoro and Beyond, a national conversation. With us today, we have Deputy Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, Undersecretary Nabil Tan, and Mohager Iqbal, who chairs the implementing panel of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front of the MILF. Peace agreements have been signed before. Mr. Iqbal, what makes this different? Why are you hopeful that this will work?
That we only negotiated on things that are not covered by those agreements between the government and the Moro National Liberation Front. There are substantial issues that differentiate those agreements and that of the MILF. One thing is about inclusivity in the final agreement between the government and the MILF, especially when it was translated into a legal document. Everybody is on board the Bangsamoro Organic Law. No one is being left out. Gaya ng sinabi ng Tagalog, walang iwanan. Kaya very inclusive. If you look at the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, nandun ang MNLF, nandun ang MILF, nandun ang kababayan, traditional leaders, religious leaders, kabataan, at saka so on and so forth. So in short, the Bangsamoro Organic Law is very inclusive.
Okay, USEC, based on your experience, I mean, this is not just landmark legislation, but the legacy of President Duterte. What are the ingredients of the BOL that make you believe this is the answer? This will be the turning point in the Bangsamoro region.
President Duterte signed this into law last July 27, and I believe that this document, the Bangsamoro Organic Law, is a landmark, very significant legislation in order to address the problems in Mindanao. It's the problem of the country. It embodies, it is not only a legal document, but a social document meant to address injustices in the past, meant to accommodate cultures, meant to be responsive to their faith in the region. The Bangsamoro Organic Law provides for those things, mechanisms, and institutions that are not in the present arm. You have the block grants, 5% of the
Which
total.
roughly is 5 billion a year, no?
The block grants is 5%, and that translates to around 70 plus billion. And then you special annual development fund for 10 years, that's another 5 billion for 10 years. So you have 50 billion that is meant to rehabilitate conflict areas. And the annual block grants of 5%, which translates to about 79 billion or 84 billion, is meant to be the operating fund, the governing funds of the Bangsamoro region.
But is it all about the money? Because clearly when you look at the BOL, one of the powers given to the BARM compared to the ARM was ARM had to go to Congress and justify why it needed the money. But now with the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, you don't need to justify to Congress. So do you consider this as genuine autonomy?
The Bangsamoro government can legislate on anything provided that it does not contradict directly any national laws of the Republic of the Philippines. And that's one essential element of a real autonomous entity, meaning power. There has to be power. And the other thing that make or unmake an entity autonomous is that it has to have access to resources. And if you look at the Bangsamoro Organic Law, we have 75-25 for taxes, and we have 100% share of the revenues from non-metallic and metallic minerals. And for fossil fuel, we have 50-50. And we have the black grant that is automatically appropriated and automatically released. And if ever the amount in the black grant is not spent by the Bangsamoro government, those remaining amount will become part of the reserve fund of the Bangsamoro Authority. And the third one, which is very important, in setting up a real autonomous entity, is about the system of government. And the ministerial or the parliamentary system is really suited to our people.
On a macro perspective, what checks and balances are put in the law to make sure that stories of corruption that we've heard from the ARM are not repeated anymore?
In the Bangsamoro Organic Law, Commissioner Iqbal, Chairman Iqbal, who happens to be part of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, placed there a pre-audit of sort. So even before the funds is spent for certain purposes, it's already audited.
There's a lot of expectation when it comes to the MILF. You yourself have said that the MILF asked for accountability and transparency. Is the MILF ready to be the role model in leading the Bangsamoro? That's a lot of expectation.
That is a real challenge for us, and we are decided to do that. In fact, at this point in time, while the Bangsamoro Organic Law is not yet ratified, and we hope that it would be ratified, the MILF leadership has already decided that, God willing, we are nominating Brother Chairman Murad Ibrahim as our incoming interim chief minister. And we have the dedication, we have the sincerity, as I have explained a while ago. But you know, we are trained, or we were trained to fight. We were trained to fight government, but we are not trained to run a government. And this is where we need the help of the government, especially, and our friends of the peace process will really help us in this regard, because we are not trained to nation building.
Yeah. Okay, I want to catch what you said in case our viewers didn't hear it. You said that the MILF was ready to fight, but not yet ready to run a government, but you need the help of the government. Beautifully said. Yusek, how will the government actually help the MILF and other stakeholders in Bangsamoro run a government? Because that's quite interesting. You have combatants for so many years, and then suddenly the expectations are quite high. You're expected to create your own political party and governance. You're expected to work with the MNLF to achieve a unified government. You're expected to reach out to all other groups to ensure that no more breakaway factions grow. Yusek, what will the government do to make sure that Bangsamoro is ready to govern?
Of course, this is an autonomous region. And therefore, national government should limit its intervention. But the national government can help by way of capacity building. We should be able to manage our expectation. This will not be a panacea for all the troubles in Mindanao. But one thing good is there is a strong positive momentum. People being hopeful that things will become better.
So let's speak layman's term. When you say capacity building, what are you helping them with?
Together with some international partners, we want to give some capacity building measures like the workings of Philippine government bureaucracy. So since there are plans into governance, there is need for them to understand the rudiments of government bureaucracy, how it is run, and what are things that to be complied with.
Michelle Ong is joining us today. She'll be reading some comments from social media on whether the Bangsamoro will bring lasting peace and prosperity in the region. Michelle.
Thank you, Karen. Well, this is from Peter Willie. There will never be peace until it is declared an Islamic state. And from Jami Jimenez, the Bangsamoro is not a battle of religion.
All right, thank you very much. You want to react to that? There will never be peace unless it's called an Islamic state?
It has never been an agenda of the MILF to establish Islamic State. If you look at the writings of Chairman Salamat Hashim, it is a pamphlet, it's a small pamphlet. It says that the exercise of right to self-determination of the Bangsamoro people can either be independence or meaningful autonomy. So it's very clearly stated that we never talk about establishing an Islamic state.
The MILF also has promises to keep for the vision of Bangsamoro to be successful. I wanted to ask you, Mr. Iqbal, in terms of the decommissioning of arms, is it the most challenging so far?
Well, we have to pay a high price for having a good law and for the establishment of a Bangsamoro government. We need to pay for something good for our people, and that's why we agreed to decommission our weapons and combatants. But we are not surrendering those weapons to the government. We are just, like a vehicle, we just put it in a garage, and it is under the care of an international body headed by someone from the Republic of Turkey and from Norway and from Brunei.
Yeah, what is your vision for this Bangsamoro organic law?
The vision for Bangsamoro is to transform the MILF combatants and its communities from transition from an armed rebel group to a progressive, peaceful community. And for the entire Bangsamoro, it's a peaceful, progressive area that is conducive for development and peace.
On that note, gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining this panel. Up next, a discussion on the Bangsamoro Organic Law. Stay with us. This is Bangsamoro and Beyond, a national conversation.
The Bangsamoro Organic Law, or BOL, signed by President Duterte on July 26, 2018, will plant the seed of self-rule by the Bangsamoro in parts of Mindanao. It will provide the framework of the new Bangsamoro Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao, which takes over from the ARMM.
Very important because, number one, it addresses the so-called historical injustice that must be addressed, especially amongst the Bangsamoro. Remember, their aspiration has been there for a long, long time.
According to the BOL, the BARMM will be composed of areas already covered by the present ARMM. This includes the provinces of Maguindanao, Lanao del Sur, Basilan, Sulu, Tawi-Tawi. The plebiscite will also determine if certain areas agree to their inclusion in the BARMM. These areas are 6 towns in Lanao del Norte, namely Baloy, Munay, Nunungan, Pantar, Tagauloan, and Tangkal. 39 barangays in the towns of Aliosan, Carmen, Cabacan, Midsayap, Pigkawayan, and Pikit in North Cotabato, and the cities of Cotabato in Maguindanao and Isabela in Basilan. The BARMM will have its own parliament composed of 80 members. These members will elect a chief minister who will appoint a cabinet. The parliament will also have a ceremonial leader called Wali. Half of parliament will come from political parties. 40% will come from districts just like the National Congress, and 10% will come from sectors. The BARMM will have its own police force and armed forces, but will still be under the AFP and PNP's chain of command. The BARMM will adopt the Sharia court system. But if one party in a dispute is not a Muslim, a regular court may acquire jurisdiction. On revenues, the BOL stipulates that the BARMM will get a block grant of 5% net of national internal revenues collected by the BIR and Customs. The BARMM will also get 75% of revenues collected in its territory. It will also get a special development fund for conflict areas of 5 billion pesos every year for 10 years. The Commission on Elections has set the plebiscite for the BOL on January 21, 2019. After the BOL is ratified, an interim government called the Bangsamoro Transition Authority will take power until the Bangsamoro Parliament is elected in 2022. President Duterte will appoint the 80 members of the interim government.
BOL is not a magic bullet that will solve everything, but everyone must work towards making it work properly.
With a stroke of the pen, the dream of self-rule is now a possibility for the Bangsamoro. For this session, we're joined by COMELEC Deputy Executive Director for Operations, Attorney Bartolome Sino Cruz Jr. We have Chairman of the Committee on Muslim Affairs, by Sandra Sema, Commissioner Maysara Latif of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. Thank you very much for joining. I think the biggest hurdle first to overcome would be to have a successful plebiscite. I think that's the first. That's on January 21, 2019, where voters come to decide on the creation of the new Bangsamoro territory. What are the challenges so far, Attorney?
Under the BOL, COMELEC has 2 major tasks. One would be the conduct of the plebiscite, and the other one is the establishment of the Bangsamoro Electoral Office. With respect to the conduct of the plebiscite, COMELEC has already promulgated the rules. But the main challenge is that we have to conduct the plebiscite not later than 150 days. So January 21 is within the 150 days, so we're good with that. And then the rules and regulations, which we will have to issue within 15 days from the effectivity of the law, that would be on September 24, 2019. COMELEC has already established a committee. That's the Committee on Bangsamoro Plebiscite, headed by the Deputy Executive Director for Operations and composed of the different heads of the line departments of the COMELEC with commissioners Pareño and co-performing oversight functions.
Yeah. Now, what makes this different is that you have 6 Lanao del Norte towns included in the plebiscite and 39 barangays coming from North Cotabato and, of course, the whole of ARM. Some may feel that this is already automatic, that they're already in, but you mentioned to me that what's important is the democratic space.
For the entire provinces under ARMM, they will be voting as one. And
But are you confident that they would all want to be in the region?
I am 100% confident, but there will be other areas as well. This would be the cities of Cotabato and Isabela, and to include the 6 municipalities in the province of Lanao del Norte. But it's not only going to be the 6 municipalities that will be voting. The remaining municipalities must accede to the desire of the 6 to join BARM. That is also the same way for the 39 barangays in North Cotabato. The whole municipalities under which this barangay are should also decide to allow these 39 barangays to be part of the BARM.
You talked about democratic space. How important is it for the Filipino people to see that the voters are willing on their own? There are no threats, no pressure coming from local government officials, that they're freely choosing on their own.
Yes, that's very important. That's the reason why the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, together with OPAP, is now on the ground right now, so that many people will know that there's going to be a plebiscite on January 21st, 2019. And in fact, I really want the youths out there to really spearhead the campaign, because I believe that this is for you. This is not for us. We're already in our middle age and we're preparing this for your future. That's the reason why I'm really, really happy that the volunteers that I've been getting are youth. In fact, today I was approached by one of them and they said, what can we do to help? So that democratic space is now being enriched, not just by us, the members of the commission, but also the stakeholders. And the primary of this is the youth. This is really for you.
Are you ready? Are you ready, let's say, that whoever the president chooses for the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, and hypothetically, if he chooses a specific person coming from the MILF as chief minister, are you ready to accept that?
We would like to take this opportunity to tell everyone that this is not only a Muslim issue. This is a Filipino issue. And the success of this undertaking, the success of this Bangsamoro Organic Law is not only to the credit of the President, to the credit of the MILF, to the credit of the MNLF and the others, but this is going to be to the credit of the Filipino people who has been also part of all of this. And the success that the plebiscite, this incoming plebiscite, we will do our best that all the areas that will be subject of a plebiscite, whatever is the result, then we will accept.
What do you think are the challenges that you'll be facing, other than the plebiscite itself, when it comes to making sure things run smoothly?
Yes.
There are also the cultural challenges in the region.
Well, COMELEC has been conducting elections in these areas, but I think the greatest challenge would be the conduct of information campaign. Every voter should be made aware of the value of his vote, what he is voting for, and he should also understand. They should also understand the rules of the election or of the plebiscite.
Is campaigning allowed? Somebody asked me, should the president campaign?
Campaigning is allowed, but that will still be 45 days before the plebiscite.
What do you believe should be included to make sure that the plebiscite is successful?
We are already going towards that very crucial transition the transition of the Bangsamoro people to be part of the national consciousness of the Filipino nation. Because now we are seeing that the Bangsamoro people would like the country to really be with them, united for peace. So it's not really just our struggle, it's also the Filipino nation struggle. So what we really want is not just for the stakeholders, the MILF, the MNLF, but as well as an inclusive, people pushing for its passage, like women, the youth, the students, the ulama, the
Do you
academe.
believe enough women are represented? Their voices have been heard?
I believe that in the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, Samira Gutok is there as well. Our voices have been heard. And in fact, in all the levels of governance in the Bangsamoro Organic Law, women's voices are there, not just as voices, they're also part of the bureaucracy. And in fact, for the sectoral parliament members, they're also given one seat.
For the Interim Transition Authority, I'm curious, will it matter to you women in this panel that the President appoints a certain number of women and a certain number of men?
We will be asking the President to really give women voices, because as we are the most affected during the struggle, we will also be seeing to it that when, actually, Karen, I'm one of the principal author of the Bangsamoro Organic Law. My push for that is born out of my stand that this is going to be an anti-war legislation. I don't like war. I have been there. I don't like it to be suffered by the future generation. And the success of this will redound to women as well, because we are affected. We are daughters. We are mothers. We are wives. If anything happened, we are the mostly affected sector, and we would like this BOL to really cater to women, because when you cater to women, you cater to community.
You've
So we
also
will be asking the President that we will be, not only the 10%, that most of our qualified women in the Bangsamoro will also be given the space.
Yeah, you've also witnessed it when the law wasn't passed during the 16th Congress. And this is not the first attempt, historically speaking. What makes you think that this will withstand the test of constitutionality in the Supreme Court? You've seen how the MOA AD was struck down. Give me aspects of the law that you believe have been changed to ensure that it will no longer
It
be
will
struck
have to
down.
be the plebiscite in the areas. For instance, in the area of North Cotabato, in the previous BBL, the subject of the plebiscite will only be the 6 municipalities. But here we cured it to comply with the constitutional provision. So in the case of the 6 municipalities, you're going to ask the whole province of Lanao del Norte. And in the case of the municipalities of the barangays in North Cotabato, you have to ask their mother municipality. So I think we have cured that constitutional issue.
Why do you believe it will now withstand the constitutionality test?
From the very beginning of the process itself, from the lower house up to the upper house.
Because even during the BBL,
And
that
then-
was the big issue.
Yes, during our deliberations in the BTC, the government made sure that the lawyers there who are part of the BTC, expanded BTC, are constitutionalists. 15 of the out of the 18 living framers of the 1987 Constitution validates that this is
Okay.
really constitutional.
You've waited for this for so long, especially you've been in Congress. What is the facet of this law that you believe will make the change compared to ARM, which was called a failed experiment?
The peace process has spawned many years, and now we have this. The difference of the Bangsamoro Organic Law compared to the other product of peace processes is that this one was accepted, this one was embraced, this one is a law that has that is a product of many tracks of peace processes with the MILF, MNLF, and many other sectors. Why do I believe that this will work? First, because unlike in the past, the government is only a unilateral product of government. Now it's going to be a partnership partnership of government and those who fought government. Now they are one, they are here, and I think no one of this group would like to make it fail. I believe this is good because we have the tenets of autonomy, that is fiscal autonomy. You will have the block grant, just like you said earlier. We don't need to beg to Congress every year. It is automatically granted to us, and you have the BTA, the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, that will make all the policies based on their experiences, based on what happened in the past. They now will have guide on how to really make this one.
Yeah. But how can this new political structure quell, they've said, political dynasties, political warlordism, patronage politics? How can the parliamentary system do that?
That's actually a very important question. Very, very hard to answer, you're right. We believe that this is a start. This Bangsamoro Organic Law is a start. It's not, we do not say that it is the end all and be all. It will really be a precondition. This is a legal framework where the people can work on. Meaning, there's this framework, there's this set of laws that will guide the people in order to govern the region wisely, so that the mistakes of the past will not be committed again. So,
But you believe a parliamentary system will have more ordinary, let's say, intellectuals, academics, ordinary people who are not from famous families. You believe they'll be able to have a seat. Do you see that as a bigger possibility?
that's the challenge that we want to undertake upon ourselves. We want to believe that we have the capacity to really go into that matured stage where we can choose wisely our leaders to really reflect our aspiration. As I said, the passage of the Bangsamoro does not end our quest for the aspiration that we will have a just and humane society. It begins.
Okay.
So the parliament really is a reflection also of our people. So it gives space because now the configuration is different. It is based on political party, meaning if you are a political party, you have your platform. It's not anymore based on personality politics. So you really have to run on a genuine platform. So that will probably make a difference in the future in terms of the political personalities that will be in the parliament.
All right. Now it's time to hear from the netizens who are joining us on social media. Michelle.
Hi, Karen. There's one from Facebook from Leonard Nunez. Consult first the people of Mindanao regarding this BBL by means of plebiscite. One flag, one country, and one national anthem. Karen?
Attorney.
We're not just consulting, we're asking the people to whether they will approve of the Bangsamoro Organic Law and the other areas whether they want to be included. It's not just consultation.
The Bangsamoro Autonomous Region for me is really a monumental milestone for the country because for the first time, the word Bangsamoro is recognized. And that word itself says a lot about the country because now the country has embraced that there is really this group of people who asserted their right to govern themselves in accordance with their faith and in accordance with the way of life as dictated by Islam and indigenous people, because Bangsamoro is not just for the people there who are Islamic Muslims, but also for indigenous people and non-Muslims as well.
Okay.
This is an inclusive government. It is not just for the Bangsamoro or Moro, it is for all.
You often talk about inclusivity, even Mr. Iqbal. But then what's in the BOL to really facilitate grassroots participation?
This is what we have been waiting for, peace. Because no private sector, no businessman will come in when you don't have peace. But with this and with the BOL, I think this is high time already for the areas within the BARM to be able to, I'm talking about economic, to be able to open up itself for economic engagements. And we needed people such as yourself, entrepreneur, to come in and help our people. I myself, Karen, is going to file a bill. This is going to be the HEZA, Halal Economic Zone in the Cotabato City. Former Congresswoman Dada Hataman already filed Islamic finance. These are all initiators of development.
Yes, may I just add, because this might raise expectations. For all those who are eligible to vote in the plebiscite, Iligan City is not part of the areas that will be holding the plebiscite because it is a highly urbanized city and independent from the province of Lanao del Norte. Okay. So the 6 municipalities plus the other municipalities in the province of Lanao del Norte. And the voters that will be qualified are those who will be at least 18 years old on or before January 21. Because right now the registration is referenced from the May 13, 2019, so there might be some who will be 18 on or before May 13, 2019, which will make them not eligible for the January 21 plebiscite.
All right, thank you so much for that
Thank you.
clarification. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. Up next, the conversation continues when we return. This is Bangsamoro and Beyond.
After decades of negotiations, the Bangsamoro Organic Law has been signed, sealed, and delivered by President Duterte, the first president from Mindanao, to the Bangsamoro. A ratification by a plebiscite now just around the corner is to be held in January of next year.
We have a framework, we have a roadmap. Those who will travel it must see to it that they travel it properly. Because we can have a paved road, but if people will squander it, then it will go to naught. So I trust that the Bangsamoro will not squander this opportunity.
For former combatants, the transition from bullets to plowshares has been hard but necessary. Israpil Sampayan took up arms when he was 18. It was his own parents who told him to do so, to fight what they said were atrocities committed against them by the military. For a greater part of his life, Sampayan took up the Bangsamoro struggle, moving around guerrilla style in areas like Midsayan, Matanog, and Buldon, sites of some of the fiercest battles between the MILF and the government. But that's all in the past now. These days, Sampayan and many fighters like him have been decommissioned and are finally looking forward to a life of peace.
Nagpa-farm lang kami, no? Binitiwan talagang baril, wala na.
Sampayan has high hopes for the new Bangsamoro Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao to be formed after the Bangsamoro Organic Law is ratified in a plebiscite.
Sa tingin namin, magkaroon kami ng kwan doon sa sabi niyo na mabago ang gobyerno natin and then makatulong man yun sa amin ba.
For religious stakeholders, the passing of the BOL and the establishment of the BARMM is by no stretch the end of the peace process in Mindanao. It's just the beginning. They look to the Almighty and the tenets of their religious faith to light the way forward.
The concept of BOL, Bangsamoro Organic Law, is somewhat inclusivity, yes. Knowing that Islam is, of course, association, not isolation. That is the rule of Islam.
That we have been emphasizing interfaith dialogue. Interfaith dialogue between leaders of different faiths, religious leaders, priests and sisters should educate the Christian population about the BOL so that biases and prejudices will slowly be eradicated.
The journey of the autonomous region up to this point has not been easy. And yet, there are more potential bumps on the road to peace. The new BOL may be challenged before the courts, but supporters of the law, including those in Congress, insist the BOL will stand any legal scrutiny. Then there is the specter of violent extremism, something that Sampayan insists should never be allowed to flourish. There are just some roads that are never meant to be taken again, he says.
Siyempre, nabitiwan natin ng armas. We are trying to find how can we take our good life, a normal life, civilian lives.
It's a law that embodies not only the hopes and dreams of the Bangsamoro, but the attainment of a just and lasting peace. And joining us in the panel, we have Commissioner Jose Lorena of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, Joji Felicitas Pantoja, CEO of Coffee for Peace Incorporated, Anak Mindanao Executive Director, City Hataman, and Marawi City Ranao Rescue Team spokesperson Samira Gutok. Once the BOL is ratified, what is the first thing that you think needs to be done? I'll start with you, Commissioner.
The first thing to be done is to organize the Bangsamoro Parliament, which is the BTA, because that will be the functioning government in lieu of the arm upon ratification of the BOL.
Yeah. Now, Georgie, you've been training farmers how to plant coffee. It's social entrepreneurship. It gives them sustainable livelihood. Based on your experience on the ground, what needs to be done first?
Government system laws on small businesses and small entrepreneurs to be ratified so that it's accommodating for these small businesses.
So you believe the first law that the Bangsamoro Parliament should pass is a law for small businesses and entrepreneurs?
Yes, because most of our laws are catering to big corporations. But when you want inclusivity in business, it's the social enterprise or entrepreneurs who addresses the social issues and that are more inclusive.
And do you think this contributes to the years of injustice when it comes to wealth distribution, that the laws are skewed towards big corporations?
That's correct, Karen. In fact, the marginalization of the Bangsamoro is not really accidental, but it was by the planning we have. Because we have this policy in the past of a core to periphery development planning, which initiate the development of urban centers, hoping that the spread of development will go to the rural areas. But in an archipelago like us, the movement of the spread of development will cater a lot of time. Secondly, the status of taxation, for one, marginalize the other regions because 85% of our large taxpayers are paying in the metropolis, particularly Makati and Quezon City, even if they are operating in our areas in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, for example. So they are not paying their taxes there. Necessarily, the share of localities, but the barangays from the share are not being defined because they are reflected to be payment of taxes in Metro Manila rather in the centers of operation of these business firms.
Okay. So do you believe new taxes should be collected from businesses specifically that goes to the region?
Kasi as part of the Economic Committee, Karen, ang isang importante po dyan kasi yung mga corporations that are operating within the Bangsamoro, kunyari Dole, may Makati office, magbabayad muna sa Bangsamoro.
Have you already calculated if that were reversed, how much new revenue will be coming into the Bangsamoro?
What's important, Karen, is really not yet computation, but really na yung block grant and all these SDFs, special funds na ibibigay sa amin, maging responsable kami. So that ang aming, not just political formations ang importante, even economic formations are very important towards the transition. Dapat yung chambers mag-strengthen na ng kanilang financial literacy for us who will be the beneficiaries of a very big funding from national. So yes, we assert right to self-determination sa ekonomiya, pero pero paano rin kami in our way, culturally sensitive, yung aming formasyon sa aming economic responsibility, we will be accountable for the money that is given to us.
If I may also add, aside dun sa opportunity for taxation, yung collection niya, tingin ko ang isa sa kailangan din nating harapin and tugunan is sana wag na lang kami palaging supplier ng raw materials. We are #1 producer of seaweeds. Basilan is the #1 producer of rubber. We have coconuts and everything. So parang palagi na lang kami yung nagbibigay ng raw materials and then hindi kami ang kumikita. Kaya nga sinasabi namin, parang sa yaman ng Mindanao, walang karapatang maging mahirap ang bawat Mindanaoan.
So with the Bangsamoro Organic Law and your husband has been governor of ARM, why couldn't it have been done before? What was the hurdle?
Well, one of the hurdles, I think, was certain provisions in the ARMM law, which the BOL seeks to address. And then, of course, the ARMM also has been there for more than 20 years. Medyo mahirap na rin, may mga kultura na rin na-develop at mga sistema na kailangan nating ayusin. And that's why we also look forward to beginning the BOL, no, in more inclusive and giving more opportunities to everyone.
I want to ask Samira, what kind of representation would you want the president to have? Because the choices for that particular transition, so to speak, the first few months would make all the difference in the tenor, the energy, and the vision of the Bangsamoro.
Yes, Karen. Ang akin is hindi lang po yung usual formations. We would know that the MILF, the MNLF, at marami pong mga big clans would maybe have representation. But since
who would you want the president to see?
we would want na ang dami po palang, Karen, over the past decade na nag-aral abroad, no, to study economics and to study governance in Harvard and in several places in Malaysia. So nakikita ko po ang laki ng professionals to actually be helping a future Bangsamoro. So ang dami mga nandito, mga masteral na yan eh. So sana po, not just because you're a big name, but you're also big in terms of track record, in terms of what you've done for your institution.
In an appointment process, you have the criteria for selection. And the president was well advised to select the best who can function. We may have bright people, but if they have no experience with governance and how to shape governance itself, then that would add to the failure. As I said, a framework is just a framework. We may have a better framework, but if we cannot translate less into good legislation in the parliament or the BTA, then forget it. Nothing will come out of the ball if the people there will not work for legislation.
Ang importante sa akin, because this will be, of course, a majority Moro composition. No? So parang we have to be conscious also about the representation of the indigenous people. Kasi sila yung minority. We must remember that the Bangsamoro struggle was grounded on injustice. So dapat conscious tayo na we also do not do injustice to the minority within our territory.
That's true, no? And this is a reconciliation. So when you are reconciling this group of people to the government of the Philippines, at least you give them a chance and let's dream with them and give them a chance to see themselves as a people.
In the ball, there is a provision that says that when you address historical injustices, it does not only pertain to the historical injustice to the Bangsamoro, but including historical injustice to the indigenous people.
Do you have fears that if not all sectors in Bangsamoro are represented once again, it could give birth to new problems? Do you fear that, Samira?
Of course, I come from the Marawi Siege experience na yung mga mauti group ng mga kabataan, feeling nila hindi nagre-reflect yung kanilang aspirasyon sa ganong society na sabi nila ang daming vote buying, etc. So you have to actually address the young people who feel that they're not part of a process that's so high up there and so political.
Yeah. So now, how do we make the whole Filipino nation understand the BOL recognizes and incorporates certain cultural features, like the Sharia courts? Of course, it's very unique. It will be practiced in Bangsamoro. How do you make Christians or people from the Visayas or Luzon understand how the Sharia courts function?
Foremost, meron na ho tayong existing na Code of Muslim Personal Laws. So we already have existing Sharia courts, which ang jurisdiction niya ay personal relation, succession, marriage, and everything. Napakaganda ng tanong kasi even among Muslims ourselves, we seem to have a different interpretation of the Sharia. Even among Muslims, there is a fear of the Sharia. Pag sinabi mong Sharia, pugot ulo, putol kamay. But we have to understand
Has that happened?
No.
Okay, there you go. Okay.
But we have to have a deeper understanding of Sharia. I especially appreciated the Sharia law when I voted for the death penalty. Diba? Because people were telling me, bakit against ka, ipayag nga yung Sharia. But when we studied the Sharia law, it's very merciful, it's very compassionate, na ako mismo nahiya akong magsabing Muslim ako nang hindi ko pala siya naiintindihan. It's also the law that provides divorce to women. It's very merciful. So tingin ko, sabay-sabay ho nating pag-aaralan yon para lahat tayo mawala yung takot.
Kasama sa Sharia law is yung halal practice.
Okay.
And this is very important because we don't have that much establishment who are serving halal food. And
In Mindanao, you mean?
In Mindanao and
Oo.
even here in Manila.
Oo.
So this one, the BARM, would open door para dun sa mga Muslim business people who would want to establish a halal kind of business.
Okay.
Just briefly, I think you should understand for the other regions of the country that the Sharia that will be implementing the ball do not include penalties such as death and everything, because what is provided under the ball, the only additional criminal jurisdiction to the Sharia outside from PD 1083 is for lesser offense within the context of the Bangsamoro Organic Law.
Okay.
What's wonderful, Karen, po sa Sharia justice system in the BOL is that it's expanding na to nationwide. One of the key features actually is that you have a choice to use the Sharia court or not. Especially kung Kristiyano ka, so nandun yun sa BOL.
Okay. Now, we still have Michelle Ong with us today, and she'll be reading some of the comments from social media on whether the Bangsamoro will bring lasting peace and prosperity in the region. Michelle.
Thank you, Karen. From Noel Palisok, he says the Bangsamoro will foster peace in the area and enable the Bangsamoro people to chart a future free from external influences. From Frank Martin, he says just proceed, no question. It's for the Bangsamoro people, just go on. Karen?
All right. Thank you very much, Michelle. Just a quick reaction from you, all of you. Will martial law in Mindanao, which is still in effect, affect the formation of the Bangsamoro moving forward?
I feel strongly that we should already halt martial law to pave the way for freedoms of expression and freedoms of formation to foster. We need our leaders to take the cudgel in a Bangsamoro government. So why would martial law under a DND or a housing now for Marawi, Task Force Marawi, be the one to govern when we already have a system dapat in place?
How can we make each Filipino actually feel that they have a stake, that what happens in Bangsamoro happens to them, to all of us?
Thank you sa question. kasi right now, a lot of people would ask me what is the Bangsamoro struggle, and I'd say you will get different answers from different people. Some would say it's about governance, some would say it's about the land. I have personally embarked on a cultural work journey, and this is not just for the Bangsamoro, but also because as we study culture and tradition, the deeper you go, the more convinced you are that we are indeed connected. I mean, we, the Bangsamoro, are a special group of people. We have our own struggle, we have our own identity. But we are not separate and different from the rest of the country. I am particularly looking into...
But do you feel that the country for so many years has acted that way?
I think we all did. I mean, the rest of the country was saying, you know, they don't understand us. We, the Bangsamoro, also kept on saying we are different. I think there is a need, as I was saying, I am into the study of weaving now, and we want to weave the narrative of all the people from Luzon, Visayas to Mindanao.
Okay, both of you, what can each Filipino do? Georgie, you're doing already one.
I intentionally moved to Mindanao for that, to understand why, and for the purpose of peace. And that's why I was able to form a social enterprise called Coffee for Peace.
What is the biggest misconception about our Moro brothers and sisters that you have seen for yourself?
Okay, they warned me, when you go there, you're dead. But when I went there, they are the same person as I am. So when you wanted to know more about the others, then, and you're open, then there's peace. And this is what I wanted to promote, the culture of peace. Let's create space for peace. Let's drink coffee over that.
And to stop spreading fear of death. That's one. Sir.
Let us understand that the Bangsamoro region is a region of abundance, and it is part of the Philippines. The abundance of the region has not been tapped precisely because we are hit by a calamity called conflict. But with the ball, it will resolve the conflict, and therefore we can harness the full potential of that region to become an economically viable region, productive region. The region can now be a contributor to the development of the entire country. So it will not only benefit the Bangsamoro with peace and development of the Bangsamoro, it will benefit the entire country.
And after the failures of ARM, my last question to all the cynics out there, do you believe the Moros are ready for self-rule?
I think they are, Karen. For me, wag kalimutan ng Pilipino yung pinagdaanan naming ng mga ilang massacres of the past. Never again siege, never again abuses. So we have to move on and transcend, but also transitional justice has to be acknowledged by the Filipino.
We have been ruling po for the last 600 years.
Okay.
Siguro naman marunong pa kami.
Nice. Okay. You're gonna answer, Jojo.
I think they are ready.
Okay, sir.
The Filipino people should take this as an opportunity to end the narrative of conflict and the narrative of division. The Bangsamoro Organic Law will put to an end the narrative of conflict. It will bring us unity, and it will also put to rest the malady of marginalization in most part of our country.
I'd like to address my fellow Muslims in Bangsamoro. Andito na ho, pagbobotohan na lang ho natin. Huwag ho nating hayaan na mawala lahat ng trabaho, hindi lang ho nitong 17th Congress. Ang tagal na nating trinabaho to. So magkaisa ho tayo ngayon sa plebisito.
Thank you very much. We thank our panelists for today's discussion. While it is a dream fulfilled, much still has to be done. But whatever happened in the past, the Bangsamoro is truly hopeful for the future. I'm Karen Davila, and this has been Bangsamoro and Beyond, a national conversation presented by ANC, the ABS-CBN News Channel, and the British Council of the Philippines.